Hello, good afternoon. It's always difficult after lunch. It's a losing battle, typically, but I'll give it my best shot. It's even worse after following in the footsteps of Mkutano, who had a colorful panel, but equally colorful socks. So I need to speak with procurement at the Mkutano company. This conversation really was supposed to, it's an intimate fireside chat, but I think there's a lot of energy in this room, so beyond the customary one person, we have three very fine speakers, friends of mine, institutions that we've worked with. I'm going to invite Davis from UNCDF to come to the stage. I think there's Sophie. Yes, from FINCA. And we have from PSFU, our great partners, Daniel. Please give them a round of applause. So as they take their seats, I'll just set the scene a little bit. This fireside chat has a Karibu. We have a thematic area around resilience and enhancing livelihoods for smallholder farmers. Now, these are interesting, well-sounding titles that we have for these panels, but beneath it is some very serious business. And across this panel, we have, I think, a common thread of primary engagement. Primary engagement in terms of what FINCA does, in terms of funding those smallholder farmers. Certainly PSFU is in the trenches in terms of your engagement with the private sector, and that extends, I believe, through some of your initiatives to smaller businesses. And UNCDF, as you probably know, has several programs, one of which is START, that also speaks to those smallholder farmers, but primarily within the spectrum of agriculture. So this is the primary panel. I will perhaps start from my far left, with Deus. I'm very familiar with your program, but maybe some of the participants here aren't. Can you just shed some light on what START is all about within the context of engaging with a smallholder farmer?
Thank you for that intro. My name is, once again, Deustiro Akunda. I'm START Facility Manager with UNCDF. So START Facility is, first of all, START is an acronym for Support to Agriculture, Revitalization and Transformation. And it's a facility that has been supported and financed with support from European Union to provide, to enable SMEs access financing, and particularly for value addition and agro-processing. We started this facility in 2018 and supported Northern Uganda agribusiness SMEs to access financing. The financing range usually between 40 million to about 500 million, and in Northern Uganda we supported about 50 SMEs that accessed financing. Now the facility is blended in nature in terms of the different instruments that we provide to support the agribusiness SMEs. So we provide, first of all, technical assistance and business development services, working closely with the private sector partners and PSFU is here, and provide that technical support to businesses until they are investment ready, and then link them to our financing partners, particularly Uganda Development Bank. Now, under the second phase, which we rolled out a few weeks ago, the facility has changed, has maybe grown, to say, whereby we are now countrywide, and therefore agribusiness SMEs across the country can now apply and access this support. And all they need to do is to go to start.go.ug. And the few things that we've changed in this second phase. Number one, so we'll deepen the business development services and technical assistance because this remains very critical. It's a stumbling block for most SMEs from accessing financing. So we'll do a lot more of that, but also introduce digital solutions to enable SMEs to, smoothen their operations. And then we are also introducing many more partners on board, including the commercial financial institutions, as well as other private sector member institutions, in addition to PSFU. So we'll have Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises as part of this engagement. And we are also, the financing instruments remain largely, having the concessional loan through Uganda Development Bank at very attractive rates and terms. And of course, the commercial financing that will also come from the commercial financial institutions. In brief, that's what we are doing. And we encourage SMEs to log on start.go.ug and send their applications so that they can be supported.
Okay. I'm going to come back to you to ask about the lessons you learned from the first phase and why you expanded it. But I want to come to FINCA. You've been in the trenches for quite some time. You've grown, but most of your action is rural. And I remember there was a question in the morning about engaging with some of the providers of capital. From what Deus has said, is there parallels that you can relate to in terms of your product, or is there a different approach that you have when you're dealing with SMEs, particularly in the agribusiness space?
Yes, thank you very much, David. Again, my name is Sophia Chihumuro from FINCA Uganda. I'm the head of credit for FINCA. Maybe just a bit about FINCA. FINCA has been in operation for over 30 years now and has been a micro deposit taking institution for over 20 years. So what FINCA does is really to reach out to the low income individuals and to support them. The biggest mission for FINCA is to alleviate poverty. And how do we do this? We identify the needs of the clients in the lowest segment of our economy, identify the needs they have, and support them where maybe commercial banks or other institutions may not be able to support them. And how to speak to the issue at hand. And I will not repeat what has been spoken about agriculture and the risks that are perceived. And this is largely due to external factors, factors that may be out of control for most of the individuals in this segment. We have issues to do with climate, changing weather patterns, the inability to predict how weather patterns will change. We've seen a lot of changes in the recent past, and we've seen how this has impacted the farmers or the clients we serve. We've seen other factors to do with the animal disease, quarantines. These largely affect our clients. And our clients are really looking for simple, if we look at smallholder farmers, they are looking at simple aspects of how do I get back what I have invested? If I borrow money, will I get back enough income to pay the loan, to sustain my livelihood, my home, and to continue growing? I think how we've managed to approach some of these risks is in twofold. We've utilized the value chain approach as well as partnerships, like we mentioned. So in terms of value chain approach, we are breaking down and identifying the different value chains in the agriculture process, looking at production, inputs, marketing, promotion and processing, and identifying unique products to serve those different segments for our clients. We've considered structured lending, whereby we are able to finance clients based on their needs, based on when they will be able to harvest, based on the changing seasons in order to support them. Again, we can't take away digital innovation and how we are moving. Mkutano has showed us how they are progressing faster than anyone in terms of digital approach. And I think we are also utilizing that. We are not being left behind. What we've done, we've identified the fact that our clients Most of them, because they are mostly in the rural areas, FINCA has opened up in almost all the regions within Uganda. We're in the central region, northern region, eastern region, and where we are able to approach all clients and meet their needs. But what we've seen is the fact that most clients cannot reach banks easily. So we've developed an approach to do with digital financial automation, where we're able to reach the farmers in their farms, able to open accounts for them, able to train them, able to advance them financing at a growth level. So a client can start small. Maybe I'm starting off with my bean production here. So the next season I'll advance to maize production as well. So we work with our clients on a journey, identifying all the needs they have at each stage in order to ensure we grow with them. But at the end of the day, the mission being alleviate poverty and support the smallholder farmers. But partnerships have been key to that, if I can say. And partnership has supported us in terms of technical assistance, insurance, and funding to ensure that where we cannot cover all aspects, we collaborate with different partners, like what we are doing today, to learn more on how we can support our clients more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie, and we appreciate your coming on board. So let me just do a quick, I'm going to pull up on the side and get the common strand between what UNCDF and FINCA are doing. So generally you're doing the nationwide approach. You have smaller businesses and farmers as a point of common interest. The digital platform is by way of distribution, and I guess there's a data conversation therein. So you do BDS at UNCDF and the start. I'm not sure that you do, but basically in the context of creating linkages, I think there's common strands there, but potentially a complement. From PSFU, I guess on my panel, you represent the off-taker. So you're a private sector foundation. You deal with a vast array of members with different ailments. We are one of them. You have heard what the funders are saying. And I know there's an initiative that you have in terms of sort of progressing the depth of knowledge and bridging the gap between finance or institutions that have support structures and the last mile primary producers. Can you articulate a little bit more on what you're doing and whether Sophie's interventions has reached your constituents? If not, how can we bridge that gap? What are the challenges that still are ahead? So just articulate what it is you're doing and some of the sensitivities with your membership.
Thank you very much, David. My name is Daniel Ojambo. I work with the Private Sector Foundation Uganda in two capacities. One as an agriculture sector lead, and I also dabble as a livestock specialist and a project known as Enhancing the Lead Farm Structure Project for Youth Employment in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation. Yes, David, you're very right around things that the PSFU does. It's a huge organization with 12 sectors. Agriculture is one of the sectors that we support at the Private Sector Foundation. And ideally, I would like to throw a little bit of light in the thing that we're doing with the MasterCard Foundation. We are implementing their strategy known as the Young Africa Works strategy that is running for 10 years. And in the strategy, there are several partners, and PSFU is one of the partners in that space. The project that we implement with the MasterCard Foundation looks at large companies in our economy. We believe that large companies can provide what we call a pull effect on smallholder farmers. So we are working from the market end, and so our intervention looks at two approaches. I'll borrow from you. Value chain development is one of those. And then secondly is the market systems development. So these two are integrated in the project that we are implementing. So market systems development, we are trying to make markets work for the very poor, for the smallholder farmers. Normally our farmers produce so many things and then they try to figure out what the market could be like. There are no specifications that they are following, and probably it makes it difficult for them to progress to another level. So that's where we start. We pick out a large company that has a market share, substantial in the market, call it, that has proven SOPs, call it, standard operating procedures, and they have specifications that are living out that they want the market to identify with. And so when we pick that entity, we contract it. We look at its entire ecosystem. And then we try to find out if the manufacturing company, for instance, have they attained their installed capacity? Is there room for them to improve? If there is room for them to grow a little bit, we tap into that space. We provide them business development services that UNCDF offers. Then we look at their suppliers of raw materials, for instance, and these potentially could be our smallholder farmers. And also we look at their distribution end. After they have manufactured the products today, how do they distribute them? So it's a linkage all through. So all we are doing is just playing out with what our economy is: large company, smallholder farmers, SMEs, sometimes we want to call them aggregators at one point, sometimes we call them middlemen, but then these are businesses that facilitate the flow of raw materials, that facilitate the distribution of products. I'd just like to touch on what we have learned over time. We have implemented this for now 4 years, and I should tell us clearly that the so-called large companies don't exist in our economy. If they do, there are very few. They are close to 2%, 3%. Examples of these could be in the agriculture sense. You'd look at Mkutano, for instance. There are very few Mkutanos in our economy, and that's one of the partners we are working with. So our economy is dominated by companies that are medium-sized and probably small. So we are partnering with medium-sized and small companies, and we are referring to them as lead companies, lead farms. The farm, the company farm, and they're the ones we are working with, and they are the biggest job creators in our economy. So we don't stop there. Right after we have linked our young people to supply raw materials, we also dig deep into what their, I would call their passion, call it. What else can they do beyond supplying soybean? Are they interested in designs? Are they interested in trade? Are they interested in other things? So we bring in what we call a 4-product model. What else can they do with the monies that they are earning? So in a nutshell, that's what we are trying to do at PSFU with the MasterCard Foundation. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. I want to get back to Deus, and I know this is the second incarnation of START, and if we're to borrow the first principles element, if we review the performance of START 1, what lessons did you learn? Perhaps it may be the scale issue that Daniel's talking about, but I'm sure there's an array of other challenges that you may have picked up, so that from a collaborative approach we can tackle them. But from START 1, were there some key challenges that you may have faced, be it policy, transactional, perhaps even knowledge? Do you mind shedding some light on that?
Okay, thank you, David, once again. I think the implementation of phase 1 confirmed so many, challenges that we've always known, and they are still there. They are not going anywhere because they are not being tackled head-on. One of the biggest challenges is that, and my colleague has mentioned the size of the SMEs that we are talking about. These micro and small and medium SMEs have a very big challenge of, capacity. They don't have capacity in so many aspects, and left alone, they can never, or they would find it really hard to actually work all the way to access any financing. That means they need, some kind of, hand-holding, quite closely working with them, helping them to address so many gaps that they have. The way they are organized, the way they are run, no financier would want to look at them unless they are polished and takes a lot of time to actually move them from where they are. If you find them registered, that's it that you'll have. You'll struggle with records, you can't tell how they are performing, the way they are run, the way they are managed, the issues of compliance, there are so many. And of course, aspects of collateral, they can't put up the right collateral to access financing. So these things remain there, and they require a lot of time, a lot of dedication. And the surprising bit is that because these issues have been there for a long time, probably they have become like normal. And you would find scenarios where you come and you are prescribing business development services, and actually some of the SMEs are not even interested because they don't even think it is necessary. So there's also that mindset change that they need to have their capacity, improved for them to be investable. And, then you also realize there is a lot of demand. The SMEs are there, they need the money, but they can't access it. And very interesting, the financing is also there in some ways. So you'll have the SCF, you'll have so many other government initiatives where money is in UDB and other financial institutions, but cannot be accessed. So on one side, on the demand side, no one is ready for the money. On the supply side, the money is there, no one is taking it, and it's really a paradox. And it requires some kind of a middle, brokerage to ensure that you link the financiers on one side and these SMEs on the other, because they need financing. There's a lot they can do without financing, but they are unable to get there.
Okay. I think there's two things we pick from this sort of tour of questions. One, our perception around large businesses is a bit, there's a distinction between the perception and reality. So we talk scale, but when you dig into it, what is big is not that great. And that, I think there's a trickle-down effect in terms of the risk element that someone writing a check would perhaps have some trepidation because the large off-taker in itself has its own risks. I couldn't help but notice that you mentioned mindset change, and if you remember the presentation before, the kids were talking about a mindset change tool. So if we can translate it, Professor, maybe we should go and deploy this thing elsewhere. But just going back to the morning, Agra and everyone else was talking about how the government can provide some support. There was a talk about filtering some of these interventions all the way down to a parish level, and that's where you operate. From your perspective, as scale is a challenge, but you're still thriving. I mean, you've been around for 30 years, you said, so you must be doing something right in addressing the scale issue and the mindset issue. Perhaps you can shed some light, if you can, Sophie, on those lessons, on how you're, as the head of credit, signing off on some of these applications.
Thank you very much, David. And I would say that there is no one simple way to say that because they've done this, this has helped. But what is good in our economy or society today and with our government is the increased focus on supporting agriculture, on supporting smallholder farmers. Because we have if we can also borrow from what our other panelist members have said, is because we have interest by government to continue supporting. There's funding coming in, there's training coming in. This is a continuous way to, one, develop the farmers, to give them knowledge, information, as well as supporting them financially. So for FINCA, what has really helped and why we have been able to sustain this for a long time is the partnerships and the collaborations we've had. We have continuously sought collaborations with other institutions to support us to add to our farmers' knowledge, to add to them in terms of assistance, knowledge, tools they can use information they can use to help them, and then FINCA also comes in. So FINCA's support has largely been on training them on financial aspects. We've come across a lot of farmers who do not even have an understanding of it's important for me to utilize the bank to save my money for the future, not to use it all at once. So with adding to our financial literacy, as well as other partnerships, what they've added in terms of technical assistance, technical information which we may not have internally, we believe that will continuously help smallholder farmers to sustain them in the long term.
Okay. I'm curious, and I'd really like for you to compare notes with Deus on what that TA looks like. I'm also curious to know what a partnership would look like, not in Kampala, but when you go to the village and to the parish, are there institutions, local institutions that you work with that really have their finger on the pulse on the ground? Is it possible to share maybe an example of how that partnership works and whatever else may come to mind?
Yes, we've worked with a lot of partners. For instance, ABI has supported in terms of risk insurance. They've supported in terms of technical assistance to our staff. We've worked with other organizations like ASELI. ASELI is also doing a lot of technical assistance for our farmers, as well as incentivizing the institution to ensure we continuously support the farmers. Other institutions we've worked with are really varied, I can say. We've worked with, as well as organizations that helped us to deal with other farmers in terms of refugees. We've worked also with some government institutions that have supported farmers in terms of basically community work, bringing them together, and then we can find them in the same location so that we can be able to impart our financial literacy and financing as well. So what I can say in short, that the organizations we've worked with are really varied, I can say, and it's something we have continuously sought to see how we can support, and I know I'll still reach out to them to see how we can collaborate more in order to scale.
Thank you. I want to come back to Daniel. Just, I'm curious, certainly about the large, not so large entity. Having learned or through your experience figured out that there's a scale issue that is misplaced in terms of our perception, are you pivoting some of your interventions to support that quote-unquote large business so that if it does well, it has a trickle-down effect? Primarily within the context of potentially having that industrial dimension to agro-processing. Is there within the MasterCard partnership a means via which you're trying to get lead farms, you're trying to get more Mkutanos out of these businesses that you're engaging with?
Thank you, David. Indeed, we find ourselves in a delicate space. If you look at our businesses and you try to evaluate how they do things, you realize that there are capacity issues all through. And I would like to borrow from what Deo said much earlier. Such capacities are what we try to build. We try to ensure that lead farms or these medium-sized businesses access quality world-class consultants, probably to help them with aspects of business diagnosis, aspects of marketing, aspects of product development, matters that could help them grow their businesses from probably medium to large. So we are interested in growing more Mkutanos. We are also wary of creating monopolies along the way. So we don't only want to work with, say, a Mkutano alone. We'd rather work with a Mkutano and another small entity, say Sekaja in poultry, or probably Pearl Dairy in dairy space, or probably even a smaller one, Sangamit somewhere, working in the beef value chain, and then we diversify that portfolio. So when we do, we tend to also look at the lower level businesses, the SMEs. We are interested in seeing that their own challenges are also taken care of. So we want to grow them as well, to elevate them a little bit to a medium-sized business in future. So I think that's what we're doing.
Thank you. I just want to, Dale shared a website where we can access information. If this is still running, I think I'm sure we can find it. But Daniel, if some of the farmers here or the businesses want to tap into some of the details, a web link that we can go to?
Yes, definitely. On the PSFU has a running website. All our projects are on the website, and they are detailed. There are contact details of key persons you can reach out to, and you get the finer details of what PSFU is doing. You're always welcome on the website. You always get support.
Or they can find you somewhere in the room after.
Even in the room, yes.
Great. I see we have about 8 minutes left. I'm going to come back and ask my last round of questions, but I think perhaps now is a good time to open up for audience questions online and in the room. If there's any pressing issue, any comments, any thoughts on this discussion. I see Charles. Okay, we've got 2 questions there. And Erica, please see if there's anyone online.
Thank you, David, and thank you to the panelists. Mine is more of a suggestion. I think I've listened into the challenges of the SMEs, and I think I agree to them largely and by far. However, what still remains lagging in my mind is, other than going for the world-class consultants that my brother there is talking of. I'm a consultant, so I don't want to shoot my own self down. I need to make that money. But I think we need to work around a mechanism that allows these SMEs grow systematically. Build some form of technical assistance. If it's record keeping, for instance, that we know is their challenge, can we get a BDS service provider, factor this cost as part of the cost of capital that they are going to access, and ensure that over a 1-year period they are allowed to grow their savings, they are able to see the benefit of what you're talking of in terms of why it's important to save, why it's important to bank. And then on the basis of that, graduate them to a higher amount. I think that is not happening. And if that is not going to happen, you're going to struggle to get these small guys off the ground. It's time, I think, to just begin to factor in that. As part of the cost of the credit or whatever, have something inbuilt for technical assistance, and this could be short-term consultants. I've said it many times to young men who graduate from Bachelor of Commerce Accounting, and they are looking for jobs, and I say there are so many small and micro enterprises that just want simple help in, for instance, filing returns to URA, doing their records and having them right. And you just need to find 20 of these and charge them 50,000 shillings a week to do that, and you'll not need a job. So I think these are some of the things that we are not doing, and at the end of the day, we completely fail to get these guys off, because that's a reality. And yes, the mindset issues notwithstanding, but I think if you got 1, 2 enterprises and worked with them, the others are able to see and learn, and then be able to appreciate, and then you can grow the amount of monies that that actually are accessed. The issues of the supply side not receiving clients, in my opinion, would be greatly addressed through that approach. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Ochaya. I work for GIZ. My request is to PSFU and to all the panelists. There is there's a lot of scope for collaboration. As GIZ, we've also been in the same space, and we're still in the same space. And we've reached out to one or two of you, but we haven't had the kind of success we want to, particularly with UNCDF. So my request is that there are many partners out there, or different stakeholders out there, and I see a lot of room for complementarity, a lot of synergies, and that's what I'll just encourage us to do going forward. Some of the MSMEs we've supported have even applied to some of the programs you run and have not been successful. And perhaps we could have had a meeting of minds to find out what were the challenges and why they were not successful. Others, believe it or not, have been able to go to the financial sector and have gotten support. So I think there's a lot that we could do in terms of collaboration going forward. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Tony Ninsim, and my question goes to Madam from FINCA. Recent week, the social media has been awashed with the new current system of IFRIS from URA. So my question to you is that how is the IFRIS system going to affect your stakeholders here, meaning the farmers you borrow your money to? And if there are any other, if there are effects that are going to be affect those farmers, how are you trying to avert them? Because as I speak of now, shops in Chikubo are closed. So it means that the producers from the farmers are not being sold, and yet these farmers have to pay you back the money. Thank you.
Shall we take one more and then we'll just answer them? Jerry? No?
Yeah. Hello? Hello.
Yes, sir.
My name is Gerald Owachi. I'm into the cassava value chain. Can you hear me? I'm an enthusiast of numerous value chains. I've engaged with oilseeds. I have engaged with a number of grains and cereals. I just want to challenge you guys. When you say you want to see the new Mkutano, has that story ever been written, really? Do we even know how Mkutano became Mkutano? I think we have a lot of snippets about success that isn't evidence-based. So I think we need to invert if you like, the framing of this issue, that actually we need to create, or we need to work with certain entities that could potentially become that Mkutano. When you invert that, it actually would in effect also somewhat invert your model, because the uptake of the products you have out there is very low, because you operate in an emerging market, maybe a market that is all intents and purposes amorphous, but you are trying to apply straight lines to engage with that kind of a market. And I think at the end of it, you'll be trying to fit square pegs in round holes. That is one. The second, which follows on from that, if you get that complexion and actually are basing these products on what actually is being professed with evidence by our own reality, you will have to temper certain things, including your ticket size, including the type of things you call technical support. I am saying this because I used to be you guys. I used to run something similar in a big way. And I think as long as we don't address the imperfections that we see on the ground, which I know all of you do, especially people FINCA, I've engaged with PSFU also, you will be selling a product that actually will seldom fit, and we will be there stuck with the money as if the money is not necessary. It is. You just need to make the right fit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we'll go back to the panel, then we'll do one last round of questions. Just to recap, CJ, the localization of BDS, just tightening those screws a little bit in terms of making it relevant, There was a conversation on tax and some of that policy issue. More collaboration from GIZ. I saw PSFU listening keenly, and then this last comment on really, I think, getting deeper into what makes a big company big and ensuring that there's a fit-for-purpose solution. So I don't know who wants to go first, Sophie, and then we can yield to both Deus and Daniel.
Thank you very much, David. And I'll start with the first comment on how do we help businesses grow systematically. That is such a good idea. And it's one of those methods we've really tried to employ at FINCA. You're right in saying that when you start with most of these businesses, they don't know the basics in record keeping, in saving, and your method, like rightly put, is very well tested and works. How do you support them from the grassroots? How do you start with the smaller funding? And as they grow, as they develop, as their businesses grow, you keep expanding and growing with them as well. So I'll acknowledge that as a very good method in improving our smallholder farmers as well. Then I'll also address the topic on tax. I know you rounded it off with IFRIS, and that is the topical issue happening now in the country. I know right now it's really affecting the traders downtown, whereby there's a growing concern in terms of how much tax is charged and how businesses are able to sustain in the current taxation environment. I agree that's a serious issue that is happening, and what we've tried to do with our clients is how do we educate them enough to know how do you keep your records? How do you ensure that you're knowledgeable about how tax comes about? How do you ensure that you do not have scenarios where the tax is going to be assessed because you're not keeping records? So how we have supported to help really, and need as much as we can, is to educate them, to ensure that if their records are in order, if they are knowledgeable of how tax comes about, then they do not have to suffer the impact. But I agree with you that with the situation happening in the country now, it affects us as institutions that lend. We've had a lot of clients coming to us that right now, with the current situation, I'm not able to continue trading the way I used to trade. How do you help me? How do you structure my loan better? How do you give me a bit of a grace period so that I can be able to stabilize before I can pay again? So I agree with you, it's an issue whereby as a financial institution we can support especially our businesses by ensuring that they have the basic information in the beginning, and also to help them bridge any financing needs they may need, and as well as structuring credits in a way that can help them survive in the event such situations come up that were unplanned, that are likely to affect them, but they do not have much control over. Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I want to agree with most of the speakers. First of all, yes, when you talk of capacity building and BDS, you certainly have to approach it in a way that allows the business to take it in at a time. It's not something that you can certainly rush. It requires more time. You need the organic growth that you've talked about. And that's what I alluded to. It requires much more time and much more resources. But of course, the challenge is, who pays for it? The cost itself is quite overwhelming, that if you were to put it on the cost of finance for these SMEs, then you even make the situation worse. So, the cost becomes too heavy for them. The businesses cannot make that money. So there need to be some, development partners coming to this space and kind of shouldering these SMEs. And of course, with those other issues of perception and mindset, definitely a lot has to be done. My colleague from GIZ, I totally agree with you. Yes, there's a lot of room for collaboration and working together because we are in the same space and, you know, dealing with the same SMEs and, you know, until we find a way of, as development partners, actually sitting together and harmonizing sometimes our approaches, it becomes extremely very challenging. Because as we move around, and I'm sure you too, you meet the same SMEs that other partners have met and probably worked with. No one has control over any of, you know, these SMEs. And you'll find, of course, our approaches, I think, in some ways differ, but I think we all mean well and good, and what is important is probably to harmonize and work together as partners and approach these entities with some more coherent and, you know, kind of engagement that is much more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your brilliant questions. I like the fact that we are attentive. Let me build on from where they were stopped around partnerships. PSFU is a membership-based organization, meaning we work with members. We are an association. We are a company limited by guarantee. So our members are the casitas who are having a challenge in town. So definitely we tend to collaborate with several development partners, and we love each time you come to engage us. So GIZ, we are always open for collaboration. As I speak, we have a project we are handling with GIZ on some other matters of energy, so we always welcome partnerships. I think let me speak a little bit about the technical assistance that our companies need and how we want to relate, how we want to ensure that these companies get world-class, call it consultancy services. It does not necessarily mean that our consultants have to come from any other country. We're actually looking at our local consultants. PSFU has championed what we call business development service standards. I think we have been developing these with the Ministry of Trade, and the document is in the offering. Soon it's going to become a bill, and it's going to regulate the way our consultants provide BDS to our businesses. So the point is, we know that BDS is sometimes expensive to small businesses. So we try to articulate, to provide it as a package in the granting space that we at times occupy. And I think we'd like to borrow it from FINCA. For them, they provide you their loan, and then they carry it on with a BDS. For us, PSFU, sometimes as we provide support in different spaces, we ensure that there is appropriate BDS that some banks sometimes don't provide, for that you know how to utilize the finances you've accessed, and perhaps know how to run the different systems and functionalities of your business. Finally, let me speak into why do we understand the journey, call it, that Mkutano probably has progressed through the years. That is quite challenging, and I may not say that Mkutano started as a smallholder farmer, no. I'm very sure we are familiar with foreign direct investments. That could be one of those entities that came in that space at that time, and they only operated at a processing level. But we're trying to grow our own small businesses to see that they move their eyes just beyond being smallholder farmers to probably adding small value, becoming cottage industries. Can somebody grow from a cottage industry to something else? I have a good example of Numa Feeds. They started really as a cottage industry, and they came to PSFU way back in the times as they went on their trajectory to become what they are as they speak. They have not come back for our grants anymore. I could say that they progressed from a cottage industry to a mid-level, call it business. So in our way of planning and work at PSFU is to see that we have more successes in businesses that try to progress from one stage to another. So I think that's the faith I brought in Mkutano, for that we understand that sometimes the FDIs, the likes of Mkutano, give us means and standards that our smallholder farmers can adopt to produce certain raw materials and supply, and then they grow through the ranks to see probably they will become aggregators next time, probably they will become cottage industries the other time, and then before you know it, we have a success around the corner. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take one last comment, two, but I'm going to give you a minute each if you don't mind, because we're running a bit late. Just the 1 minute. There's a question down here in the corner. You've got the mic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Very quickly, two questions. One, what we are discussing here and what the gentleman and the lady have presented are very, very good ideas, and what they are doing is incredible. How do these things go to the farmer? Because I'm a farmer from the rural village somewhere in Chegegwa. How can everything you have been talking about here get there? Because the truth is, we do not know. Even myself, I didn't know if I had not come for this through my friend. So how can the people, the real farmers, get that information or the financing that you're talking about? Two, we really have two crises, extremes: extreme heat and extreme rainfall. How can we, or how can your finance be tagged to climate smart farming? Because those are the things that are failing us as farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we, I think, Daniel, you can answer the dissemination element of how do we get the message out? And I guess as an umbrella organization, this is your bread and butter.
Thank you very much for reminding us. We've not told you how to access us. I know we've talked about websites. We tend to have drives in regions, and I think the latest drive we had was in Jinja. We had what we call the Women's Day Katale. In our view, we target an area and we try to bring out all the programs that PSFU does. So sometimes if we don't do those drives, we use different media channels. Sometimes we're on radios, sometimes we're in the newspapers, sometimes we even engage district authorities. As I speak, I think a fortnight ago, I was in Zombo, touching base with the district authorities, discussing about the Irish potato potential of that district. We met a couple of farmers, and they got to appreciate the bigger details that the financing ecosystem sometimes provides. So I think, David, I could answer on that.
Thank you for that question. I know you mentioned the aspect of extreme weather, and we've seen it a lot this year, more this year than other years, though, as we know, agriculture, this has always been something that we are aware can happen, because apart from weather, there are things like prices of products that are being affected because of, again, as a fallback from the weather changes, as well as other aspects that are really uncertain in most cases or unplanned. So what we do in terms of that is to, one, get information that we can use to support our farmers when we get it. But we all know that the information we have, in most cases, all we are able to obtain is never accurate. So how we support our farmers is in terms of structuring and restructuring in case they have loans that are already running. I'll give you a current scenario right now that almost all farmers who are dealing into the cattle corridor, cattle fattening, have been affected. I know they've had quarantines before, but they keep coming up, and it's not something you can plan. But what we do in such a scenario is to support them with better structures. We restructure for them where need be. We waive certain aspects that might impact them more. We've also seen it with the clients who deal with maize production when prices went down. So these are realities or the risks that usually come with agriculture. And in most cases, and if we look back at the discussion we had, what we are all trying to do is how are we able to anticipate them better? utilizing the available information or the available data that has been collected. It's really a journey, but I think what we are doing is trying to partner as much as possible so that we can pass that knowledge to our clients. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we ran out of time, but the conversation will proceed. Is there one more question? But as we get the mic over to Matthew, I can't help but notice that Mr. Patrick Oketa, my brother from private sector, financial sector deepening of Uganda, sorry, there's so many acronyms that I've used today, is around. And I don't know if you caught the comment that Dale shared when he had his initial submission, saying that there tends to be things lost in translation between the supply and the demand side of capital. People get into the dance floor, but they're not moving in the same way. And I'm aware of some of your work, Patrick, that helps bridge that gap, just helps synchronize the beat so that they're dancing to the same tune. And whether that can cascade to some of the pain points that have been listed here. So maybe that's a conversation that we can have. If you're not aware, I'm sure Patrick can share some insights in that regard. And then secondly, perhaps something that I should have shared in the beginning, and it comes back to what David said in the morning session. If you look at the landscape of finance in this country, and if we segment the tier one sort of the commercial banks versus the other tiers, the private sector credit allocation to agribusiness is 10% for the tier ones, and about 27% for the rest. So the microfinance businesses have a larger allocation to the sector that is perceived to be riskier. Even more so, there's 40% of private sector capital for the tier 2s, 3s, and 4s to trade, much of which is related to the agribusiness sector. There's institutions that have figured it out, but there's still a reluctance on the big institutions to step up to the plate. So the disproportionate allocation of private sector capital from commercial banks, tier one banks, relative to the landscape, the opportunity landscape, the prioritization that we were speaking to in the morning, is something, for me, Mr. Wazemba, may speak to the lack of information or not having a platform where lessons can be shared. Because there's some things that FINCA does that Stanbic may not know or may need to be adopted through non-bank equity. I just think it's some food for thought. I know Mr. Wazemba was speaking on this later or in the week, but I want to take this into the conversation with Professor Mbabazi and the other partners. So, yeah, Matthew, a minute.
Yeah, thanks. I've lately been doing some work, and I'm thinking about some of the interventions that are happening in the region, which involve skilling and more like to skill for commercial agriculture. It's what you call the RICA, Rwanda Institute for Commercial Agriculture. It's a post-secondary school intake training in commercial agriculture from all aspects. And with that comes a startup field, access to equipment, access to export facilities like pack houses and all that, and eventually market. So everything that we're talking about, even us now, where we are with our peasants, we are converting from peasant agriculture. We provide a tractor service, we provide some planting and all that, just to stimulate climate-smart agriculture. The issue at hand is most of the financing being structured in Uganda is micro-lending. There's nothing that comes into, I've heard in the business space that even PSFU will talk about. We've got partners, Mkutano is an off-taker. Mkutano got funding from the Dutch government to set up the sunflower value chain, and that is the success you're talking about. Now, we're at a crossroads at this time, where in the neighborhood, investments in logistics, in big offtake markets are opening up in the Middle East for animal feed from Uganda, but there is no substantial investment. And why I'm worried about some of the things that many people talk about is we think we are playing in isolation, but in the Arab world, they are desalinizing water for agriculture. They are producing the fertilizer. They are providing diesel for farmers, and they're becoming more competitive. We are still talking about our favorable climate, which is a challenge in terms of just drying maize. You may get the rain, but you have to dry the maize. But there's a couple of dryers in the whole country. Now, when I come to your bank and say, this is a region that potentially produces so much maize, but I need to invest 3 billion shillings. It's my vision. And probably I can even collateralize this. I can bring up the commodity in volume, but the track back to ask me, where did I start? What was my grandparents' income? What have I been earning as a personal salary? It doesn't unlock a lot of things. It's now by magic. One time a partner calls me and says, hey, Lorica, we're from Hello Tractor, want to try and do a service in your region. And I say, you're welcome, let's give it a try. So that translates now into a weekly payment of 3 million towards purchasing a tractor. But it is not the same story I would face from the bank. To purchase the tractor, you tell me collateralize it. We're giving you a loan of 140 million with an interest over and above of so much. So the models that we're talking with have got two fundamental flaws. One, the infrastructure is not being financed. So whoever is producing cannot get to a market. Right now, there's only one big maize mill that is able to consume much of the produce that farmers push. That's Mandela and Mkutano for sunflower. Other than that, the breweries also want the commodity and everyone, but it's not structured. Then on the micro lending side, it's a mountain to get through. So how can you people readdress yourselves to these issues?
Yeah, okay, Daniel, in 60 seconds. Then we'll take this conversation back to the business circle.
All right, thank you very much. You've been very informative around Mkutano's investments. Yes, it was a Dutch investment that came in to help out with the outgrower scheme, and it grew. Let me agree with you around the inadequate animal feeds that we have in the country. In fact, we've just finalized one of our projects in what we call supplementary feeds, where we partnered with the European Union in the cattle corridor, and we had immense success in what we did with the farmers. One was just to promote the idea that they can make hay, silage in the dry spells to feed the animals with proper water and all that. But then what has not been done, and you're right, is sizing up the Middle East demand for animal feed. That's something that I know my colleagues at PSFU are working on. We want to go and map out that market and probably come back and see what we can do. Infrastructure-wise, yes, the country has a gap in probably the infrastructure that would consume our raw materials on a large scale, I could say. And probably financing mechanisms that my colleague here will speak about need to be structured in a way that is blended, similar to what UNCDF is championing, to see that there are benefits for both the entrepreneur who is trying to take this loan and then probably the bank as well, not to make losses from the loans that they're trying to avail.
Okay, guys, I'm going to sum up the discourse here. I think collaboration came up as a key element, lessons that we can share, BDS, making sure that there's a fit-for-purpose solution in that regard, data, database or tech, fit for purpose in that respect, and also the element just now on infrastructure. Is there anything missing? Okay, we're going to put that into the business circle. Just give me the best post-lunch round of applause that you can muster for our esteemed panel. They've been brilliant and the conversation continues. Thank you so much.